Welcome to our video on exam technique. In this video, we're going to look at all the various types of exam question you could get and common pitfalls, tips on how to answer them to get you really prepared for your up and coming exam period. So first up, we're looking at multiple choice. And we're going to look at the common pitfalls involved in answering multiple choice questions. So first of all, we've got that rushing through the paper. So trying to do the multiple choice too quickly, often because you think they're the easy questions when they're not. They do involve some thinking about. Not going back checking over the answers, not double checking what you've put in at the end of the paper. Now, not putting answers directly onto the multiple choice answer scheme. So if you've got answer sheet, so if you've got a multiple choice test or exam that you're doing and you have to fill in a separate multiple choice sheet, you should do that as you go, not circle the answers on the paper and plan to fill it in later. You must do it as you go, because if you run out of time, your multiple choice questions will not be marked unless they are filled in on the answer sheet. Now, not concentrating in the multiple choice section. So if you're zoning out in the middle of reading a long question, that's obviously going to cause you not to concentrate and thus not to really understand the question. Misinterpreting the keywords and also those command terms that you get. So you really do need to have a good understanding of your keywords for what you've studied and the command terms. And then also skipping instructions or skipping calculations that could be involved. That's a really common pitfall. And finally, having a panic attack or kind of getting these mind blocks because you can't answer a question. So we will look at some strategy to how you use your reading time and things like that, and that is where you can overcome the chance of the panic attacks and mind blocks. So all of these strategies we need to overcome. Okay, so when it comes to answering the multiple choice questions, many multiple choice questions test your logic and reasoning. Okay, so how you can look at a concept and logically choose the correct answer, and also that reasoning, that's that why is that the answer. If you feel you are guessing a response, then choose the option that you feel has the most logic to it. So which out of the various ones that you're guessing, which one do you think is most logical? Now, explain to yourself why you think it's the most logical choice, because then that might actually make you think, hang on, no, it's that one. Now, also, you've got to use your knowledge of common prefixes, suffixes, and word roots to make intelligent guesses, okay, about the terminology that you don't know. So, for example, a knowledge of the prefix super, for instance, would clue you that superheating refers to overheating. Supersaturating would mean oversaturating. And when you think about multiple choice, remember you may be often asked to interpret charts, diagrams and graphs as well. So make sure that you can look at graphical information and interpret it. They could be in your multiple choice section. Okay, now the next thing is to watch out for keywords. And we've got some keywords here that they're not actually key terms in referring to the subject that you're studying, but they're key English grammar words that if they're in a multiple choice question could have some bearing. So when a question or answer contains words such as always, every, only, never and none, there are no exceptions to the answer you choose. Use of words such as, use of words such as often, rarely, sometimes, and generally indicate that there may be some exceptions to the answer, and therefore it may be more likely to be true. All right, multiple choice. Now the process, you're in that exam. What is the process of answering a multiple choice question? If you don't 100% know the answer straight away, what we now need to do is eliminate some of the choices that you know are incorrect. As you read the list, whether it be 4 responses, that's 4 responses, eliminate the ones that you know are definitely not true. Now, next up, you need to relate each alternative back to the stem of the question to see if it fits. And then what we need to do is narrow down the choices that we've got left, okay? So whether you've got 1 or 2 alternatives, then compare them, identify how they differ, and hopefully by that time you will get to the one that you need. Maybe at this point you may be making that logical guess. Now, we do have a few other tricks up our sleeves for multiple choice questions. First up, if you're really stuck, skim through your paper and see if there's any other question in the paper that might give you ideas. Sometimes there's a short response or an extended response that may answer that one question that you're stuck on. Still desperate? Look for 2 answer choices that are opposite. One of these 2 answer choices is likely to be correct. So see if you get 2 distinct opposites. Now, one of those is potentially going to be the correct one. Now, a good exam practice is to leave the most difficult questions until last. But keep an eye on the time, knowing that you are going to need to go back and do those questions that you've found difficult. Start working, so if you've got reading time and you've finished doing your skim read through, then start mentally working through the multiple choice if you have extra time in that reading time, okay? Because then when it comes to actually filling in your multiple choice answer sheet, you're kind of 1 step ahead. Write your answers on the response sheet as you go, okay? We can't stress this enough. Do not leave this until the end of the exam, because if time runs out, no answer on the answer sheet, you get 0 marks. And again, can't reiterate this enough. Skip hard questions. Maybe put a question mark next to them or a star so you need to come back at the end, okay? And if the last result is having that logical guess, then do it, because you've got a chance of a mark. You leave it blank, you're not going to get any marks. Now, if you are in the senior years, okay, we've just got a few other things for you to think of. Remember, sometimes examiners are looking for the most correct or the best response. Often one option is not so good compared to another because maybe it's not always true or something like that. Narrow the field down. So ask yourself whether the answer you're considering completely addresses the question, or is it a bit off tangent? If the answer is only partly true, or is true only under certain narrow conditions, then it's probably not the right answer that we're looking for. Okay, now, do you need to make an assumption in order for the answer to be true? Is this assumption so obvious that the instructor would expect everyone to make it? Now, many plausible and incorrect responses are common misconceptions in the subject. Prepare for these by reading examiners' reports of previous years. And if it looks like a trick question, think again. They very rarely are in the senior years. If you suspect that a question has a trick, make sure you're not reading too much into the question. Try to avoid imagining the detailed scenarios in which the answer could be true. In most cases, trick questions are only tricky because they're not taken at face value. Okay, so now we're going to move on from multiple choice and have a look at short response questions. Now, when you're looking at short response questions, you're looking at questions generally down this area, okay, of our taxonomy of learning. So they might be asking you to state, they might be asking you to explain, they might be asking you to use some information, but you're not potentially going to be creating and evaluating, not in a short response. These come in the extended responses. So they're not always, some of the short response will be slightly higher order thinking, but a lot of the time short response are not your higher order thinking question skills. Now, when it comes to short responses and extended responses, we use that term command terms, okay? And here's a table of it, command terms. These are terms that are included in a question which are telling you something to do, okay? And you've got the definitions there of what each of those command terms are telling you to do. My advice would be pause this, take a photo and learn what these things mean, because describing is very different to explaining, okay? And you need to know the difference of each of these words, because when it's in a question asking you to do it, this is what's getting you the marks: your content, your subject knowledge, and what it's telling you to do with that subject knowledge. Okay, now tips for answering your short response questions, and they're shooting off here already. We've got read the question, so really read the question well. Identify those command terms. What is that question asking you to do? Identify the subject words, so those subject specialist words, those words that relate to what you've studied. Look at the marks allocated. If it's allocated 2 marks, it probably wants 2 points in the question or in your response. Don't overwrite. These are short response. If it's worth 2 marks, you want 2 logical points in there, not an essay. Make sure you have structure in your response. Make sure you are to the point, discussing the topic in the question and in the way the command term wants you to. Check you have answered the question. So once you've written the answer down, read that question again, check that command term, check the subject, and then read your response. Have you answered the question? And a few other tricks now for our short response questions. Keep your science answers succinct. So this video, I'm a science teacher, is science-based. You may be watching it for another subject area, but keep your answer succinct to the topic, the subject that you're answering. The number of marks is a guide as to the number of points or responses you need to make. Skip questions that you can't do. Come back to them once you've completed the paper, okay? And you might even get some ideas, or you might be answering another question and it actually makes your brain think, oh, hang on, that's the answer to that one, and you can go back. And stick to your planned timing for these questions. And now we look at extended response. And now in our extended response, we're usually using some skills from higher up, those higher order thinking skills, bringing in some of the others as well. So we have a range of thinking skills in the extended response, okay? So a range of chances for your answers. Now, again, extended response, really important that you understand command terms. All right, tips for answering your extended response questions. Remember, I'm a science teacher, so this is a science video, but use your subject-specific vocabulary. In science, make sure you're using scientific terminology as well. Understand the command terms. Figure out the context, okay? So extended response are what we call application questions. So what is the context of the question? What subject knowledge do you need to bring to that application question? Don't go into extended response quickly, just writing whatever in your head. Take a moment and plan your response. If you find it a bit tricky, look for hints in the question. What area of what you're studying does that question relate to? Okay, we've got some tips now for you in the actual exam room. Now, most senior years papers will have what we call reading time, but it's important that you use this time effectively. Read all the instructions on the paper first. Now, you do that during your reading time, okay? So read those instructions. They're so important. Don't just think that front page just has random writing on it. Read your instructions. Now, what you need to do also in your reading time is skim read over the paper. The older you get, generally, the shorter that reading time might get. So you need to skim read. You're not reading in depth. Skim read over. And whilst you're skim reading over, you need to get an idea of what questions are going to kind of cause you a bit of a challenge. You need to decide what ones you're going to answer first. And if you don't have time to complete the paper, which ones have you left? And they have to be those challenging questions, okay? You want to try and work out how you can fit all those questions in the time you have for your exam. Oh, now, whilst you're skim reading over, get that feel for the questions that might challenge you. Okay, you've then planned your time. Don't spend ages trying to digest the question. This time isn't about that. Skim read over, identify the topics that you know challenge you. Now, you need to manage your time in the exam. If you have reading time, we've just talked about that. Skim read over that paper. How long is your actual paper for? Make sure you know that. What's the mark distribution between the sections? How many marks is on multiple choice? How many marks is on your short response? How many marks on extended response if you've got it? Plan your time to answer the questions you get, and then have time left at the end to go back and do the questions that you don't get. Okay, at the start of the exam, so you've had your reading time. Now the exam hall manager has said, okay, you may now start your paper. So quickly go through and star or question mark, whatever, all those questions that you know might challenge you. Now attempt all the questions that you get, all the questions that you know, yeah, I get that, I can do that. So answer all of those questions, and then you know that you've got time to go back to do the questions that have challenged you. Okay, so when you're answering the questions, read the question carefully and highlight or underline any key words. So those command terms or those key words. Highlighting the command terms, remembering they're telling you what to do. Look for hints in the question that might suggest how to answer it. Think through the answer before you start writing your plan, okay? So your plan is what your response is going to be. Draw diagrams or put things in a table if that will help you. When you've finished, check that question again and make sure how you responded actually answers the question. Is it doing what that command term has told you to do? Okay, so you've answered your questions that you get. Now those challenging questions. So tackle these once you've done all the questions that you're confident to tackle. Now also, as you've answered other questions, you might have had ideas how to answer some of those challenging ones. So get those ones done and out the way. Do as we've explained previously. Is there is there a logical answer? Is there something reminded you what to write in there? All those, and then those previous steps on how to answer an extended response, these ones, do these with the question that then challenged you. And have a go to answer that question. Remember, exams are meant to challenge you. You cannot just easily answer every question in an exam. That's not what it's about. It's really about trying to extend you and see where that knowledge you've got can take you. Now, exam room tips. There are heaps and heaps of exam room tips that you can find just by Googling exam room tips on the internet. I did that exact thing and I found this, which has got some great advice on how to be organised in your exam room and how to manage yourself as well as your exam technique in that exam room. But the most important thing is to just breathe. Once you're in that exam room, there's no more preparation you can do. There's no amount of beating yourself up for not revising or not doing this, not doing that is going to help you. Just breathe, take a deep breath, and do the best that you can do. And as long as you do the best that you can do, we cannot ask for anything else. You've got this. Good luck and enjoy your exams.